What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 5th episode of the Fully Pinned podcast. I just want to shout out Ty. Look, mate, you're an absolute legend. It's been so dope to be able to continue the chats, and I cannot wait to see your career blossom more. Guys, I actually prepared some questions for this one. Yes, I did it. And we touched on some great topics. We hit some nostalgia up. We had a bunch of laughs, and we brought up some topics about the future of MTB in Australia. But before we get into it, I just want to shout out a few brands and businesses that I love, use, and endorse. Top of that list, of course, is All Mountain Sports. Love those guys. Thank you for supporting me and doing everything that you do for the community. Yeah, we got to hit up that Purity plant protein. Then we got Crush Oz, Crush cleaning products. We got Bike Corp, we got Spank Bikes, Flip, love your gear, and of course Leah MTB, but no more of that. Here it is, 5th episode of the Fully Pinned podcast with Ty Bowmaker. Let's go!
But it had front suspension and disc brakes and a derailleur, and you're like, yes, I finally got a mountain bike. I'm ready to go up that bloody mountain. This is the best we can do right now. I got the beast. Southeast Queensland is great. Like, people just need to be more appreciative of what they got.
Alrighty. Guys, this is the Fully Pinned podcast, episode 5, with the man behind Captivate, Ty Bowmaker. Now, if you've, my man, thank you for coming on.
Cheers for having me.
That's okay, bro. It was a bit of a miss to lock it down, but I'm glad we could finally make some time to do it, bro. It's going to be awesome.
Fully pinned, let's go.
That's the one, brother. That's the one. I love the hype. Also love the bike in the background. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I had to jazz up this room. This is the home office space. So, it's pretty dull at the moment. I've honestly been moving about quite a bit recently, had a bunch of projects, a bunch of travel, and I've just wound up here in the last month or so. So I haven't even set this space up properly. I like to have art and stuff and photo prints and whatnot. So it's a shame we don't have more lining the walls, but this is the best we can do right now. I got the beast.
Mate, I think sometimes, creative people love an aesthetically pleasing room, but at the core of it all, considering what you do, having the beast back there, that's totally dope.
Practical sometimes.
It's just I'm done with the call, straight on the bike, out the door.
Well, funnily enough, I was on the bike, but just before the call, probably an hour before the call. So
I seen your story. Where was that? You were flipping up the top of some gorge, or?
Yeah, I just been on the road for a day or two. Me and my girlfriend just love to pack up the van. We got a bit of a camper set up and just make the most of this beautiful nation we call Australia. There's so many places to go and
explore. Bro.
It's why am I just going to sit around the suburbs all the time if I've got the luxury of time and whatnot to actually get out there and do it? So
100%. It's recently I've found a bunch of, there's quite a bit of elevation not far from my house, and me and a mate just got some literally just sticks in the bush, chucked on some runners, and we just went for a dig. We found some old moto enduro trails, but just the scenery that we found out there over this, we were only out there for 90 minutes, and it's I know everyone whinges about Southeast Queensland and a lot of Australia, dry, rocky, skatey, for riding on. It's
Southeast Queensland's great. People just need to be more appreciative of what they got.
Oath, bro. It's so true. What you got is what you got. So you can't just be hey, God, can you just give us lomas everywhere? It doesn't, we've got some beautiful, beautiful terrain, but
almost got to go to another nation for that, hey, for just pure loam trails.
Yeah, I know. Or Tassie. The days. That would be so good one day. But man, so obviously videographer, photographer, Captivate. So this is obviously you've got your personal account, but Captivate's your creative account. Tell us a bit more about in depth, what you do. Do you like videography more than the, photography, or is it just a big creative effort for you?
just nowadays consider myself a creative artist, really. Like, there's so many facets involved with with running a creative industry, that it's not just photography or videography. You've got to have some skills in like graphic design, as well as marketing, as well as communicating with corporations and business people and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like a little bit of a rundown for people. I'm Ty Bowmaker. I'm the founder of Captivate and Inspiril Films. And Captivate is an action and adventure focused, while Inspiril is time lapse and aerial and corporate focused. So like two clear, distinct, different like companies that I'm like building up right now. And Captivate is more just like a like an alter ego, I guess, of myself. And,
that's sick.
And my creative pursuits, my adventures and whatnot. So I don't like to get too personal on social media. Like I feel like I like having a personal life, you know. I like having a private life. I don't want to showcase everything I'm up to on social media.
I get that.
So to like expand a little bit further, I'm born and raised in Wollongong, which is just south of Sydney. Yeah, the Gong, beautiful place, mate. Real beautiful place. I think Wollongong gets a pretty bad rep, especially from Sydney side. But you know what? I'm quite happy for them to just stay up there, and we can have this beautiful little paradise down here. So, speaking of which, like we got trails that end a few blocks away from the ocean, so that's pretty special. And like the mountain range that we have here, it kind of like hugs the coastline as it progresses south from Sydney.
So good.
Yeah, so it's like a pretty perfect spot to grow up and ride mountain bikes, and it's close enough to Sydney that you got everything that you could possibly need as well. Like the vast majority of my work either takes place like in Sydney or interstate or overseas. Like I don't really do a whole lot of work here in Wollongong, so to have like close accessibility with an airport and with a major international city is pretty convenient.
Perfect,
but then you got everything else that you possibly need down here in the Gong. It's a beautiful spot, mate. Have you visited? You've been to Wollongong?
Yeah, look, I've been through, but I can't say since I've been back on a bike. As I'm 36, so when I was in high school, you know, bikes were on pastime. It was every afternoon. But since I've been passionately and fervently, you know, back into this community, there's so many, like, obviously there's so much of Australia I want to explore, but, you know, there's so many places, including the Gong and, you know, surrounding areas that I'm like, Flip, I want to go here. I want to go.
Yeah, dude. I know exactly what you mean. That's like a big catalyst for me traveling around so much, is just to go and see like all the amazing trails and wilderness that we have here in Australia, because there's no shortage. Like if people think there's a shortage of trails in Australia, they're mistaken. It's more just they're kind of a different caliber or different style to what might be found overseas. So people might think, we don't have trails here in Australia. It's like, no, we do. They're not like machine built jump trails like Dirt Merchant or A-Line and Whistler. They've still got plenty of trails, though, that's for sure.
I very much prefer, like, I will say that I've built a few things on nothing like crazy, but like, you know, punched out a few. And I think anyone that's like really ridden a bike or, you know, really gotten into mountain bikers, slapped some dirt or scraped something out in a forest, like I much prefer booting through some raw forest, like something that's hand cut. Like there's a trail up here on the Sunshine Coast and it's not like a map. It's probably only about maybe 4 or 5 lines from the top of the hill in Mapleton, but that's all hand cut, like downhill.
And right, I've been to Mapleton. I didn't do any riding while I was there, but beautiful part of the world. Hey, like Mullaney on the other side of that dam and whatnot. So beautiful, mate.
Bro. So beautiful. And like you just think about like that's one speck in what Australia is. Like one little speck. Like I went out to a wedding in Mullaney just recently, and like the wedding was beautiful. It's one of my good friends. And I stood there on the hill looking into the valley, and all I could just see was like, imagine zipping through here, and just the grass and the greenery. And then, you know, you've got the Aussie outback. You've got places like the Gone. You've got like, you know, Central Coast in, you know,
you got rainforest,
North
Queensland. You got everything here in Oz, mate.
Yeah, 100%. So you mentioned before, like you traveling a lot. Did you just come back from doing something for the UCI recently? Like you saw something for Sam?
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's
Is that under wraps or?
Yeah, that's out in the open. So how do I start with that story? This one's off the cuff. Well, I haven't even prepared a response for this one. So
Sorry, that it's just
no, it's all good, man. Just give me a moment to think.
Yeah.
So as I said, I'm from here in Wollongong, and probably the most prominent mountain biker we have here in the area is Josh Carlson. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Josh Carlson, but for anybody who isn't, he is essentially a TV host for the UCI and Warner Brothers Discovery now.
I know who he is.
He travels the world racing mountain bikes and conducting interviews and whatnot. So this was part of like a pre-season marketing effort for Warner Brothers Discovery at the Cannonball Festival. Like Josh Carlson kind of connected the dots there. So shout outs to Josh. What an absolute legend. Like such a good bloke. And it's not like I've never filmed a mountain bike race. It's not like I've never had an opportunity to conduct interviews with Sam Hill either. But there was definitely something about this project that put a lot of weight on my shoulders, because essentially for context, actually, this will be real interesting for people, because I don't know if this is something that's like public knowledge or whatever, but I can discuss it now for sure. Warner Brothers Discovery, they were essentially in a position where they didn't have access to any footage of World Cup downhill, because for the last like decade or so, it had been owned and run and managed, etc., by Red Bull, and Red Bull didn't want to forfeit the rights to that footage. So Carlso was already in contact with Warner Brothers and was like,
so
"Hey,
there's
going
start
to
from
be
scratch."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Other than maybe some photos or something like that, that's like some photographers were able to license. They didn't have any footage like from racing or anything from previous seasons that they were allowed to use. Maybe they did end up licensing some, but my understanding was that sending people like myself and people like I can't even remember who was doing it in the UK. It's not Tommy C, somebody else. But basically, they needed to come together with a big team library of footage to start promoting the races leading into the season, and that was why they got me on board to go down to Cannonball, because they knew that there was going to be all these international mountain bikers that were going to be there, that were competing, and there was nothing else on the international race circuit at that time of year, because Europe is still under snow.
So, so they can't shoot anything there.
Pretty much. There's no racing or anything really going on there. So it's like you've got Greg Minnaar, who wasn't racing, unfortunately, but then Jackson Goldstone, Laurie Greenland, Sam Hill, Benoit Collange, who's from France, who's like top 10 downhill racer.
He's always in the mix.
Camille Balanche, who's a top female racer as well. Exactly. So that was a prime opportunity for them. And that's why there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders in order to deliver for that event. They didn't necessarily have the budget to pay for a larger crew of operators, camera operators. They were sending me and just me down there to capture it all. I'd like to think that the footage
Cammy
that
was down there, wasn't she? Didn't Cammy?
Yeah. There was.
Yeah, that's right.
Mate, there was a heap of professional racers. I'm just basically providing the context there and saying that that's how that shoot with Sam Hill was organised at Cannonball. Yeah.
Like coming from like I've worked in marketing department for the business I mentioned earlier, and considering what they go through to get out content, like say if something trends like that and what they've got to do to turn it around, or just the backlogs of content. Like I've seen all the files. I know all the photographers and videographers that work for that business. That's why I was like jaw dropped, because that's Warner Brothers Discovery, like that's not a joke. The UCI, it's no joke. It's a main sanctioning body for cycling. So it's nuts to be like, oh, here's the reins, guys, but obviously they don't want to release that footage, so they're like, oh, twiddling fingers, like, what are we gonna do? That's so nuts that they've pretty much got zero. Like they had zero to begin with.
It blew my mind as well, really. Like when I found out about it, like blew my mind. But honestly, when you've got a company that scale, they're willing to pay decent money as well. So that's why you've not only got the pressure of having to deliver all of this footage and there's only a finite amount of opportunity, one race run or whatever, but then there's a financial expectation that's attached to that contract that you're initiating with them. So, but when all was said and done, like I delivered what was necessary. Like one may even argue that based off the metrics and the performance of that footage globally, that I exceeded their expectations. So I'm pretty happy with that, mate. Like I can't complain. And I get to work with some of my idols as well, which just blows my mind.
So
if you told me when I was 15 years old that I was going to be paid thousands of dollars to go and film Sam Hill or Greg Menard, I didn't know how to respond, to be honest. Be pretty surprised.
Do you, obviously your Instagram. I've got a couple other questions, but this is just sparked some. Obviously, your Instagram's pretty well established. How do you think, how you've been shooting mountain biking stuff for a while? How did they come? Like, obviously, you had Captivate, like the self-recorded film that won its awards. How did the UCO? Was it just because of Josh that like you guys linked up? Had they contacted you earlier, or how was the connection made that you got awarded the gig?
Honestly, I just got to thank Josh for connecting the dots there. But if I wanted to expand upon that and maybe give the audience a bit of like value or some insight, is that it's one thing to be able to bridge these gaps or like link the dots with these prospective connections or clientele, but it's another thing to actually have the body of work and the expertise and the knowledge that you can provide to them and say, this is what I'm capable of, this is what I've done in the past, and this is what I can provide you with on this occasion. It's going to cost X amount of dollars, and this is what's included. This is what you're going to receive. These are the assets that you're going to receive, and be willing to have some kind of mutual dialogue as well, because you can't be entirely concrete. Like if I went to Warner Brothers Discovery and I said, these are my exact rates for this day, and this is what I can provide you with, chances are they're probably going to say, oh, can we maybe get a little bit more than that? Because it just, for some reason in this industry that I work within, it's always a case of like, can we get a little bit more than that? It's hardly ever like, we're happy with that. That's a fair price. We'll work with that. So usually you've got to do a little bit of back and forth as well. And I guess what I'm saying is that you need a culmination of all of those skills and foundations in place to even secure that contract with Warner Brothers Discovery. Like it's one thing for Josh Carlson to just be like, local filmmaker, he's real good at what he does. You should just trust that he's real good. But that's not good enough when you're working with a multinational corporation.
Exactly. The package,
Yeah.
That is just so, like, it's so nuts to think that, they've started on the back end, but like, obviously it sounds like Josh, even though you've got that mutual connection, he's just like, nah, I know the guy that's got the package that can provide what we need on the deadline, got the rates, got the...
Yeah, it was no
you were ready.
His end. Yeah, exactly.
You were ready, 100%. Man, what was the first, what got you into mountain biking? What was the first sled? How old were you when this happened?
What got me into MTB? Was that the question?
Yeah, like, what was your, obviously, you are where you are. You're doing what you're doing. You can shred on a bike. You travel in the world doing what you do. But, like, what's your story into mountain biking? Like, what was the first bike?
I guess to provide context, like I was fortunate enough, like privileged enough when I was young to be able to go and ride dirt bikes.
sick.
motorbikes. And mostly like single trail and enduro style stuff, not too much motocross. And that kind of gave me the confidence to just be out in the bush, out in nature, and not be scared of like snakes or spiders, or being like like real far away from home, or being away from my parents or anything like that. So being able to build that independence was amazing as a kid. And then it got to a point where my parents were just over the whole logistical nightmare of going and riding a dirt bike, like having to pack up a trailer and whatnot.
Oh, bro, mission.
Oh, huge mission, way bigger mission than going mountain biking, that's for sure. And that's kind of what got me into mountain biking, was that like I live right next to a mountain range that's about 400 meters towering above the ocean. And when you've got that type of terrain there, you wonder, like what's up there? There are good trails up there. And I remember like reading magazines about mountain biking and stuff when I was a kid and thinking, this looks pretty cool. I was always into dirt jumping and whatnot. And then I got a mountain bike. I remember my dad, absolute bloody legend. My dad, my dad's not like terribly well off. So, and for him to be able to pay off a mountain bike on lay-by was incredible. Like I'll never forget like my dad doing that for me, you know. Pretty special. So I was about 12 years old, and he bought me a giant Rincon, a hardtail. Like had very basic components, like nothing special in terms of being a mountain bike, but it had front suspension and disc brakes and a derailleur. And you're like, yes, I finally got a mountain bike. I'm ready to go up that bloody mountain. My mates and I, ultimately, we would film each other all the time because we wanted to replicate our heroes. So we'd like,
that's what anybody does.
We would watch films like Nitro Circus, like the early Nitro Circus films that would come on DVD, like before streaming platforms existed or YouTube existed or anything.
Oh my gosh!
And New World Disorder, The Collective.
NWO was the jam.
And lots of Clay Porter films as well, and like just downhill race documentaries and stuff. So I guess like watching films like that and just watching just people like Sam Hill just go as fast as they possibly can, be like,
they're lunatics.
Let's go do that. Let's go. I want to be Sam Hill. Like I want to be that guy that's going as fast as possible down the hill, and I want to film it as well. So yeah, that was like a big inspiration for me and my mates getting into it. Hey,
that's so sick. I'm finding like a lot of like relative things as we're having this conversation, like I'm getting these answers back. It's kind of making me think back to what I did on a kid as a skateboard as a teen, what I did on a bike. And you damn, I did that because I tried to send myself down a set of like 12 or 13 stairs because Jamie Thomas did the leap of faith in Tony Hawk's Pro Skating 2.
Exactly.
And then what year is this? 2004, 2005, maybe 03. Drop In. I was a series on
the TV series.
The TV series. So there was like
on Fuel TV.
Yes, Mike Kinraid, Jack Veracloth. Brett Tippie had a showing in there, like the OG free riders. So my introduction to mountain biking, and I'd already been, as a kid, when I was a kid, like you got on a bike, like you didn't just ride the footpath. You jump stuff, you hurl down hills, like on these crappy little like 20
hucking off retaining walls and
just do it like snapping things like. And then when I saw this, big Marzocchi ridiculous force 640 bars, like these gigantic like Oakley shirts, and I just saw these dudes just like, oh yeah, that looks sick, and they're just jumping off something that's like 40 foot, high. I was like, oh my gosh. And so that was like my proper intro into mountain biking. It's saying you're talking about these throwback films. I was like, oh, it makes you remember why we love this sport, It's like, and it actually also gives you a realization. It's like, oh, this is actually pretty crazy. Like riding a bike like this, or trying to is like really nuts. Like, it just shows you how skilled really that these top guys really are.
Yeah. Professionals for a reason, mate.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite rider that you like to work with, or someone that has been, or like a team or anything like that that's been like, oh, that was a highlight of my creative career so far?
Too many to list, really.
Yeah, I bet. Or maybe like even a favorite project.
Yeah,
recently.
I got some notes. So
yeah,
I've had the chance to shoot with a lot of my childhood heroes.
Yeah,
and those shoots have always meant the most to me, just for obvious reasons, like talking about the nostalgia factor and whatnot. People like Sam Hill and Greg Minnaar, who have had careers spanning the best part of 2 decades, which is mind-blowing in itself, and still to this day are well-respected athletes. Like, isn't
wild.
that just insane, man? Like, they have been riding mountain bikes for longer than I have, for longer than a lot of people have, and they're still
competing.
Arguably some of the best athletes in the sport. So that's shout outs to those fellas, Sam and Greg. You boys are absolute legends. And if it weren't for those two, along with people like Steve Pete and Nathan Rennie, Fabian Burrell, Cedric Gracia, I wouldn't be riding a mountain bike, that's for sure. And I've had the opportunity to basically meet all of them, come to think of it. So that's pretty incredible.
Mind-boggling.
Otherwise, Bernard Kerr and the Pivot Factory team have always been like a lot of fun to work with. Like, I've done two projects with them throughout the years. And the thing with Bernard, like, he knows exactly what he wants out of a shoot. And that includes creative direction. So it makes my job as a DOP, like a director of photography, the person wielding the camera and capturing the footage, pretty straightforward. Because
how good
Bernard will just be like to me, I'm going to ride the track exactly like this. I'm going to hit this corner exactly here. There's going to be a cloud of roost. You need to make sure that you pan through and get that moment. And then we're going to swap to another camera angle that's about 10 meters down the track so that you can get it from a head-on angle instead of a behind angle, which the previous shot was. And, like, I guess what I'm saying, working with somebody like that has that much creative insight is easy. Like, it's really easy. And I think a lot of people, especially in action sports, like, they're very sanctimonious, might be the right word. They're very protective about their creative process and stuff like that. So they might think that working with somebody like Bernard Kerr, who knows exactly what he wants, is a bad thing, because they're like, well, then I don't have any creative freedom. Like, he's telling me exactly what I need to do. And I'm not going to lie, sorry, Bernard, to be transparent. At first, I did kind of feel the same way. I thought to myself, what is this guy doing? Like, he's not the one filming. Sure, he's an incredibly talented bike rider and manages a race team and all that. You can't take away any of his
achievements. That's it.
His positive attributes or achievements, but he's not a cinematographer. But the funny thing is, mate, the amount of video projects that Bernard Kerr and people like, let's say, Brendan Fairclough or David McMillan or Sam Hill, the amount of video projects those blokes have worked on, the amount of knowledge they have that's involved with a process like that isn't such a bad thing. Like, they know what looks good. They know what their fan base wants to see. So to be able to work with people like that is just like, it's easy. Like, it removes an emotional attachment that I have with that project and just allows me to work and get the job done.
And run the gig. Yeah. It's crazy that you say that, because, like, obviously, you know, these athletes, that's a mad blow. These athletes, they're incredibly talented people, but sometimes I think, you know, you look at this world of riding bicycles, you know, from a not a fan perspective, and they're like, oh, they're just guys riding bikes. Like, they don't, like, people would, I reckon, sometimes understand, like, they'd look at a pro downhill race and be like, oh, it's just a guy fanging down a hill, without knowing how intelligent, how much knowledge, how much skill actually goes into doing it. So it doesn't surprise me that you can say, like, you know, I can't remember what I was watching, maybe like a few days ago, but I read a comment on YouTube somewhere. Bernard runs a race team with however many riders it is.
I think it's like five other riders or something
five
like
other
that.
riders.
He's got two or three enduro races and two or three downhill races. So
BK Sports, you know, like, obviously that's going to be, I wouldn't know
YouTube
stats on it,
channel.
that's going to be Berman YouTube channel, which is, you know,
as I said, he runs the team. He basically owns the team. Maybe not entirely in terms of like all the capital that's been invested and stuff like that, but he's the manager of the team. Like, he's making a lot of decisions involved with running that team. And for them to be so successful as a team, and for him to actually be racing as well and competing in like the top 10 downhill riders in the world, like, mate, tip my hat to you, Bernard. Like, fucking hell, 100%. Mate. Keep up the good work.
It's wild.
Cheers.
I didn't. Cheers. Because I will say I'm a big BK fan. I love how he, you know, presents himself. You know, I love his image. Like, I'm a fan of, you know, Liak Gear, and I found him through a Liak ad.
That there,
yeah. Like, and when I, you know, delved more into the, you know, the athlete and like learned more about who he was, I was like, damn, like, you got to work on, you know, as a professional racer, you've got training, you've got, you know, physical responsibilities, you've got responsibilities to all those sponsors, you've got all that stuff. That pressure alone, as we know, is wild. And then he runs the team, does all that stuff. So shout out BK for
100%.
Do you have a place that you've been to that you've been like, that is just like etched into your memory, like burned into your memory in regards to your work?
Dude, that's kind of the same as that last question. Like, how do I narrow it down to like a favorite rider that I've had the opportunity to work with?
Yeah, true that.
Man, I got to say.
Let's make it like top three.
No, I don't even need to do top three, man, because I've got an answer for you here. And obviously that's ready. So hard to answer for anybody, because like if you've been privileged enough to go to like Whistler Bike Park in Queenstown and then go ride throughout the UK and go ride in places in Europe and go ride all throughout Australia and to Tasmania and like the list goes on, how do you narrow it down when there's so many different experiences? Like, all those experiences just been beneficial and great, really. But like, honestly, if I really had to narrow it down to one, it's got to be the Port du Soleil area, and that's in the French-Swiss border. So you got places like Champéry and Leger, where they're going to have the big like week-long mountain bike festival for the UCI later this year, and they've had World Cups like the last couple of years in Leger. And then just over in the next valley, you've got Morzine, which is like home to some of the best downhill riding in the whole world. And you go over into the next valley and you're in, dude, how's this slipping my mind? It's like one of my favorite, Châtel, of course. You're in Châtel. So it's like, you've got about 7 resort areas, 7 lift accessible resort areas that you can go ride under a single lift pass. And any style of riding that you can imagine is available.
Possible.
Whether you want to ride enduro style, or you want to ride like more cross country, just chilled out like gravel riding or something like that. You want to go do some epic hike bike mission. Like, I've done some missions where you've pretty much got your bike on your back. Like that thing on my back, holding it with one hand and another hand on a cable as I'm like pulling myself up this ridge to get on top of this mountain so you can ride back down into the little village on like a goat track. So like, basically, mate, that area has everything. Like, people say the best place to go ride a mountain bike is like Whistler or Queenstown. I disagree. Like, I personally think it's Port du Soleil in France. Like, as long as there's not even a language barrier there's so many Brits and stuff that it's just like, you can just get away with speaking English, which is just crazy. Like, you're in France and it looks so French, mate. Like, it's it's like you're on another planet compared to Australia.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even a difficult experience. Like, yeah, so anybody that's even considering going to that part of the world, then yeah, Morsey, Leger, Chatel, Champery. Like, if you like gravity riding, just go do it. If you like road cycling, they have the Tour de France there. It's like, how can you get?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm pretty sure that's the same region as the Tour de France. Yeah,
and you can see Mont Blanc at the top of the mountains. It's like,
well,
I met my girlfriend there as well, so it's like,
oh, no way. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's like that place has a very like special place in my heart for multiple reasons, and I'm sure a lot of people that visit that place kind of feel the same. Like, it's a very, very special part of the world.
It's funny, like you mentioned about like how memorable that type of scenery is, because I was looking. Dean Lucas put out that Todine episode, with, oh my gosh, Ed Masters yesterday, just talking about, they did like a interview recap type thing of the first round.
Oh, did Eddie film that, or was that on Dean's?
It's on Dean's channel.
Yeah, right. I love Dean's a good bloke, man. Dean is.
Yeah.
I think Dean cops a lot of shit from people. Like, I think a lot of people look at him and they're like, this guy's a fucking phony. Like, why does he act this way?
Not.
Why is he being so transparent? Why is he being so nice? It's like, Dean's a fucking good bloke. Like, Dean's
just how he is, 100%.
And I think it's actually real cool that, like, not just him, but a bunch of other people have got like videographers basically on board full time working with them, because to me that's way more interesting than just watching a highlights reel that the UCI's release of a race run. So
I think that's why, Moi stuff obviously is jacked up, so quickly. Like, he's an absolute legend. Like, you can't,
legend.
You can't not, knock the guy. But like, bringing Stagsy on to do this year is just like so sick. And I really like high quality content. I like looking at, when I say high quality, I was like, I love watching stuff in, cinematic quality. So when Dean, he's got the videographer rolling with him through, and presenting it from his perspective, and, creatively, like, those guys are on the same page. And then you throw the mountain biking in there. For me, I'm not just taking in mountain biking content. I'm enjoying a form of art that I really like to watch. And it seems that quite a few guys, are moving in that direction as well. Like, there's other mountain bikers that are bringing people along to, in Loic. I actually even noticed, of course, Loic Bruni has a YouTube channel, but he's even doing a little bit of that now. He's just got a guy rolling around with him, filming parts of his season and his day, like, at each of the rounds.
Yeah, I see. Honestly, the only problem I see with that is that it becomes kind of like a saturated format of video. Yeah. So then you've really got to start. Let me give you an actual tangible example, because I don't think anybody in downhill has really got to this point yet in terms of doing vlogging and stuff like that. But the best example I can give you is Sam Pilgrim. Like, Sam Pilgrim's up to the stage where, like, he will find any retarded. Sorry, I shouldn't use that. It's not a politically correct term. But you know what I mean? It's just like, he will get any ridiculous idea for a bicycle and try and send it off some jump that's like 20 foot. And it's like, you're just getting to the point where you can't think of really anything to do, and you have this like expectation from a fan base or whatever. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Sam Pilgrim or anybody else. I just feel like that's kind of where their head is at. Like, they get to a point where they're like, shit, like, if I hit a ceiling, like, what's next? Like, what can I do next that's going to lure people in to watch this? And that's where I see this kind of downhill vlogging format stuff going. Because I don't know, maybe I'm not a hardcore enough fan of downhill racing to the point that I want to know what Dean Lucas had on his toast every race weekend. Like, I just
No, I totally get it.
And once again, I'm not throwing shade at Dean or anybody else. That's my thought process regarding that type of format.
Yeah, I get it. No, I totally understand. I don't know if it'll move like completely in that area, because I think you have to. I reckon some people Obviously, no, we're all sharing our own opinions here. I reckon some races will look at what these guys are doing and be like, oh, sick. Maybe I can get the YouTube going and bring a guy along to film. When you look at someone like Dean, who's an artistically creative guy, and obviously he's moving in that direction because he has a passion for it. And I think you'll see other stuff where they're trying to do the same thing, but it's not going to have that. It's not going to have that vibe. Like the good stuff will separate
Probably
it.
just because they're producing it more of like more because they feel as though they have an obligation to do so as opposed to a creative pursuit.
Yeah.
Because as you said, like somebody like Dean, like I've spent time with Dean, I've known him for a while, and like he is a creative bloke. Like I think that's also why he might cop a bit of flack from people, is they think like, why does this bloke have neon blue hair? Like, what's up with that? Like, who's he trying to impress? And it's like, that's just Dean.
Getting a perm,
he's just he's a colourful, creative bloke. Like, just leave him be. He doesn't mean any harm, and he just wants to do cool shit. Like, I don't see a problem with that,
Not at all. I've chatted to him like a little bit since he moved to the Gold Coast.
Dean, mate, I'm not trying to make this conversation about you either or blow smoke up your ass or whatever. It's just like that you've become a good example for what we're talking about here. That's all, mate.
Yeah, that's it, definitely. And I can attest that personality, because when he started releasing some of this stuff, obviously he's been vocal about what he's gone through in regards to his passions towards the bike, and he started releasing like his edits and that. I said, I actually took a lot from the first one. I found it quite inspiring to see someone transparent about, from a professional perspective about what they're dealing with. I was like, I messaged him, and obviously, he would get a million messages a day, as does any one of those guys. And he's just like, hey, man, thanks. Like, he replied and said, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. Like, he didn't just be like, thanks, bro. Like, he could just so easily say, thanks, bro. And I said, hey, man, I found it really inspiring. I sent my little message, and we've chatted a little bit here and there ever since. And he's got time for people, bro. Like, it's sick. It's a cool thing to see, and it makes me want to support the content more,
It's an important quality of like running a self-managed business, I suppose. Like, kind of why I'm like receptive to hopping on this call right now. Like, I feel like it's important to give people time of day in particular circumstances.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, bro.
We went pretty in depth on that one, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think
that's all good though. I don't mind at all.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. Funny thought. Like, right when you were like talking about what you think this creative pursuit is going to become in regards to people vlogging, I just had the epiphany that you look and sound like one of like my mates from church, like just minus the beard, and he's a bike rider and stuff. Like, he's a tradie in that. But like, as you were talking, oh, bro, I was wigging out. Yeah, bro.
Send that through. Meant to be going to Derby next weekend. That's pretty exciting.
Oh, mate, you're going to have a good time.
I hope so. It's for gravel cycling. I don't even really know how a gravel cycling race works. Like, don't go telling Lusty Industries that, but
it's so
we'll
funny.
Figure it out. It can't be that hard, can it? As long as I got a way to get around.
It's so funny how like each discipline of bicycles like throws shade. Like, there's always that quirk, like, e-bikes suck, or like, no, road cyclists are just guys that drink black coffee.
I've definitely been that guy that's just like,
we all have
fucking e-bikes. But then I take a moment to think about it, and I'm like, they're out on a bike. Like, how do I know that person doesn't have like some acute medical condition that, like, if they didn't hop on an e-bike, they'd have no way of getting out there in the bush. So sometimes it just takes that little bit of maturity, that moment to just be like, no, you know what? Fuck it. Let them ride their e-bike, even if they're smoking me up the hill on my regular pedal power.
Oh, bro, when I'm at Nerang, and like, obviously it's one of the premier places for people to
The
you know,
Nerang, it's pretty rocky at Nerang, isn't it?
Yeah, very rocky.
Yeah.
But you'll be pedaling up the hill, and like you just see people zoom past, and you're like, that's when you want to make bad jokes because you're like suffering while you get to the top, and these guys are just chuffing past you at whatever speed they're doing.
Oh well, we end up being fitter, don't we? You don't have an e-bike?
Nah, bro. I don't have.
Neither do I.
I don't have a bike at the moment. I'm in between. So,
oh yeah, you said your frame snapped or something. What were you riding?
Yeah, I was on it.
What were you riding?
Siskiyou T7.
Oh yeah, Polygon.
Yeah, it's funny
though. I'm pretty sure I made the commercial for that like 2020.
That's hilarious.
I did, yeah. T7, T8, I'm pretty sure. Siskiyou T7, T8. I'm going to have a look right now. So I make sure I'm not giving you bullshit on that one.
That is so funny.
Website. Yeah, because, dude, it was like mid-COVID and the bike market was just going insane to the point these bikes were like sold out before we'd even... Like, we didn't even need to make a launch video or anything, and these bikes would have sold for sure. Let me have a look. Yep, Siskiyou T.
That's so funny, bro.
Which is yours? Is yours blue and yellow?
No, mine was the green. Mine was a 2022, I think. The green and yellow one.
Maybe this is maybe what I think is blue is your green. There's definitely yellow on there, like yellow up towards the rear triangle and seat posts and stuff.
Yeah. And it's got like a fade into like a teal. It's kind of like without showing off my. It's kind of like
that's funny.
Teal
that's
color.
Actually kind of funny that I made the commercial for that one.
Commercial for the bike that I.
But it's not even that funny. It's just like it just goes to show that like as much as I can talk the talk, I've actually walked the walk as well. Like, yeah, you're not talking to some bloody chump.
Yeah, bro, you got to back yourself. And I've always said this. Like, I'm a big personality, bro. And like when I was in sales, I was very successful at what I was doing because I became very comfortable and have always been very comfortable around talking with people. And I've used that skill to help me move into different areas of my life and succeed at different things. And, you know, I've openly expressed my opinion around like my talents and explained to people where the basis of that comes from. And it's like, you know, you've got a body of work, you've got skills, you've got the package. So when the UCI calls you up, boom, I'm ready. Like, let's go. And when people require that of me, you know, if someone wants me to, you know, can you come speak on this? Can you help me write this up? I'm looking at doing some work with people in running their social media accounts because a lot of people just don't know how to speak on social media in regards to what captions they write about the business, this, that. When I've told people he's like, well, why do you think this way? And I'm like, well, this is why. And it's the same with you, man. Like you're not a chump. Like you know exactly what you're doing. You've got the skills to pay the bills, so to speak. And you know, and I think that's why you'll continue to be, you know, successful at what you're doing, man.
Thank you, mate. But I just want to say that there's going to be moments in life where all of us will feel like chumps.
Oh, 100% there will be.
It's just part of learning, isn't it?
Yeah, bro. I'm kind of going through that phase now, like, especially being a parent. Like, you know, I was having a cracker morning. This is so funny. I was having a cracker morning with my kid. And right when we tied up at the BMX track, when you become a parent, bro, just when they're super, super young, just continually remind yourself their processing, you know, central processing unit doesn't develop and work. And like this kid, I was like, one more lap, Judah, because like we got to go because I wanted to get back and get ready for this. I actually wanted to take him to a bike store to get him some new gloves, but there was accidents and roadworks going both ways. So I was like, I just better head home. And when I told him we had to go, he rode down this little hill and went back to the car, but then he kept going up the hill and dropped back into the track. And bro, there's these two blokes on assistive bikes, like they're, you know, paraplegics. And here's me stand. I'll be completely transparent with you. I was like, Judah, how many times have I told you? Like, and there's Mel's, and in that moment, I had that chump moment, and my head's like, he's 5, bro, and he's learning just like you're learning to control your emotions being a parent.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so funny how life, you know, it doesn't matter like what stage of life you're in, you'll have those ethereal moments where you're like you just get your ass kicked by it, you know? So true. Feeling like a chump on the daily when you're a parent. Oh, bro. Well, I will say, though, not to scare you from having kids. Obviously, I know you mentioned earlier, but it's so beautiful, bro. It is the most testing thing, but it's the good far outweighs the frustration you go through parenting young ones.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the right time, mate. That time will come eventually.
100%, bro. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
28. I'm actually 28 tomorrow. It's my birthday tomorrow, mate. Pretty crazy.
Bro, there we go. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you, mate.
All good.
Just another day living the dream tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, mate, I dare say you've got it pretty good doing what you're doing, bro. Like,
thank you.
It's a bit of a dream life. I do have aspirations to move in that direction creatively. Like, there is stuff that I want to do that I haven't really shared with anyone, goals that I've written for myself that I think would be the best use of my personality. So when I found your page and we started chatting a little bit, I was just like, damn, it excites me because it just shows that, you know, if you put your foot down and you take the time to learn and build relationships and skills, that you can really actually do anything that you want.
Pretty much, yeah. Just priorities and sacrifice, I guess. A little bit harder when you got kids and a family.
Bro, I edit. It's just like I go to bed at 7 to 8. I get up at 3. I have a coffee and read my Bible, and then I edit. Like, and that's what I process every morning. And then on the days that I don't edit, I'm in the gym. So, yeah, bro, it's
good use of time.
You still there? Still got your audio?
Yeah, I'm still here, mate. Can you hear me?
Well, hang on, I've lost you. I actually heard a woman's voice just then, and I don't know why.
Oh yeah, I'm not too sure about that, mate. But unless there's somebody home,
I've got you back.
But
I've got you now. I've got you back now. Is there anywhere you like? Have you got like a, you know, is there a place you'd like to go and work? A place in the world that you haven't been yet that you'd love to visit?
100%, mate. If I could, I'd just continue to travel the world infinitely. I'm sure a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, just I just need to hire you for like the next 3 years. Can you just go to every event?
At least 3 years. It could be the next decade. I'd be pretty content with that. Long story short, mate. Yeah, well, way more difficult when you got a family, but I'm pretty lucky in that regard. You know, I don't have a whole lot tying me down, so like I'm pretty fortunate. Say, for example, I got a gig in I was telling you, I got a gig in Derby in Tasmania next weekend, and if I had kids or if I had a mortgage or something to pay off, it'd be a lot more difficult for me to just make that spur of the moment decision and say, hey, I'm free to go down there and work on that project. So I'm pretty lucky in that regard. But in terms of somewhere I'd like to go and work, like, man, sky's the limit. You know, if you're asking me dream destinations, straight up going to go to the International Space Station. Like, if somebody can put me on a rocket to get up there, like, why not?
I was expecting that.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I want to go to space. I know logistically it's pretty unlikely that I will ever get to space in my lifetime. I've accepted that. But hey, if somebody's going to pay me to work, get up there, go work on a feature film or something, I will do it 100%. I'm willing to do whatever training is required. But then if we want to focus a little bit more here on planet Earth, something I've been thinking about for like basically my entire career is to travel Australia and make a feature-length film about mountain biking here in Australia, which has been done probably like close to a decade or so since anybody's like done anything on that scale. And when I say feature-length film, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like full runtime of like an hour and a half or an hour or something like that. For me, it's more, I don't really want to speak about it too much because like I have intellectual property I need to retain, but
Yep.
I just feel like there's so much potential for mountain biking, and we can get to that in a bit more of an in-depth discussion in this call. But like, there's so much potential for mountain biking here in Australia, and for filming mountain biking, and for athletes. If we have some of the best mountain bikers of all time coming out of Australia, and I don't really know if too many people have done that justice in terms of encapsulating all of that in a film. So that's definitely a career goal in the
you've got the vision
in the near future, like the near to mid future. That's probably something I'm gonna be working on. But that's like, I've already traveled so much of Australia, so that's like, I'd like to do that. But then if we want to look at other places, I'd love to go to the Himalayas, like the largest mountain range in the world. Like, what more needs to be said, really? And when you're going to somewhere like that, like the culture shock's got to be pretty intense as well, I imagine. Like, you are bordering India, China, Tibet, Pakistan. So it's like, you're going to get some crazy experiences, like some ethnic experiences that you just won't receive here in Australia or in most of the Western world. So, and South America as well. Like, I'd love to go to South America, particularly Patagonia. Like, it's weird that, it just happens to be there. Patagonia, Chile, Peru, Brazil. Brazil looks incredible, man. Like, I would love to go to some of the big cities, and I don't know, you hear some pretty dodgy things about South America. Considering
its history,
you'd maybe want somebody to guide you around. I've been to other parts of the world where they don't even really allow tourists. Like, you kind of have to go there and get a guide. So I don't necessarily oppose that experience. But yeah, that's a bit of a summary as to like some places I'd love to go and work. And I don't know, I'm kind of at the stage of my career now, mate, where if like, I'm pretty flexible in terms of subject matter. Like, if somebody wants to fly me to, I don't know, Chile to work on some documentary about the lithium mining there, then I'll do it. Sounds good. Like, I don't necessarily need to go there to film mountain bikes, is what I'm saying.
Got you. Your skills can be used in other collaborative efforts.
100%, man. And that's like, I kind of hinted at that like earlier in the conversation. Like, I've got a production company that I've set up that's just dedicated to time lapsing and aerial cinematography. And last year I was able to work on a commercial with a mining company in Western Australia and trying to crack into that industry a little bit more, because we all know there's no shortage of money in mining. But not only that, like, I find the industry fascinating. Like, a big reason why I love using a camera is that it opens so many doors. It gives me so many opportunities to go and experience like things like mining, where like your average person has never been on a mine site. They don't know what the process is like, etc. And honestly, mate, if I had just filmed bikes my entire life, then I wouldn't have had an opportunity like that. So pretty happy to have such a broad range of experience, I suppose, what I'm saying.
That's really cool. It's funny, like, I think that actually touches kind of on where is it?
There's kind of like another question in here that like pertains to a lot of us.
Yeah, it is. No, it does. Oh, I think, like I mentioned, like down the list a little bit. Obviously, you've been in the career. You've been doing this for some time. Is this something that you're just gonna continue on doing? Do you think there might come a day where you're like, now I'm done with the camera, or are you happily thriving? Like, can you see yourself doing this for some time?
Yeah, I had a bit of a think about this one.
This is more life. This is life questions,
Yeah, this is a philosophical question, and the way that I see it, if I can meet my basic human needs. I'm physically capable of carrying a camera around and walking between A, B, and C. If I'm able to support a family in the occasion that I decide to have one, and I still have a good time juggling all of those aspects of my life, then I don't really see why I can't continue along the similar path to the one that I'm currently on. Like, I've had quite a good trajectory with my career so far. I'd be quite happy to continue along a similar path.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
as long as I'm able to, and it's healthy and it's sustainable, because I feel like it's the same as anything else, mate. If it's not doing your mental or physical health any benefit, then you should probably assess the positives or negatives surrounding that, you know, and maybe cut it out of your life.
Correct. Well, it's quite funny you mentioned that. I released, I've got my own YouTube aside from this, and I don't have any expectations of it. Like, obviously everyone would love to have, like, you know, a couple million subs and have a career off making videos and all that type of thing. Like, that idea and notion is a fantastic thing.
That's just a byproduct of success. That's just a metric of success, basically.
Yeah. I make the videos and I do what I do because I genuinely love creating. I genuinely love, you know, what media can do. But I put a piece of content out there. It's kind of like a raw talk thing where you know, everyone talks. There's a huge thing on, you know, social media, obviously, about transparency around mental health and like job satisfaction and stuff like that, especially for millennials. And I put a piece out just talking about my story and how it took me quite some time to get out of the space that I was in and actually have the mental capacity to assess and look at what I was doing and being like, no, I friggin' really hate this. I'm really bitter. I've become a bit of an asshole in areas of my life, and I need to make moves to get out of this joint. Like, I have to get out of this situation, because if I keep staying just for a friggin' check, I just keep staying because it's an easy routine, this is going to plummet me into a bad place that I don't want to be in. And I was kind of already heading in that direction. And what's happened since I've left that place, like emotionally, mentally for me, massive, like huge changes. Like, I'm in a job where it's super flexible with my family. My boss at the moment is my best.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, mate, because I was thinking surely those positive impacts or benefits on yourself, that would impact your family immensely, you know, like traditionally
100%.
speaking, the man of the family is the breadwinner and the provider and meant to be headstrong, etc., for the family. And if you're in a better place mentally, you're going to be able to provide a hell of a lot better for your family. And that's arguably the most important role or thing that you can do, right?
Oath, bro. You're so correct. And I can easily, like, that whole culmination of working 40 hours a week, running my own business 40 hours a week, and then like being a parent to 2 young children, having responsibilities as a husband and a father, being in a better place. Like, if anything was stressful outside of work, because I was coming home internally dissatisfied, it made my mentality on negative things that happened outside of the workplace much easier for me to snap at. And when I started to realize that, even though it took as long as it did, you know, we have our chump situations, like we mentioned earlier. When I started to realize that and what I was dumping on my family, you know, we all have a child. I was like, I have to change it, because if I stay on this road, it'll break the family apart.
Yeah.
You know, like it'll put crossroads between me and my wife. You know, my kids notice that I'm going through what I'm going through. So I'm so glad that, because people don't get the opportunity to have that epiphany until like so much more damage is done. They stay in careers for so long. And yeah, it's a really, I'm very happy that I'm in that place now. And it's cool to see, you know, other people, you know, of a similar age, like, you know, yourself, you get this career, and, you know, even you, like, you know, you mentioned, as long as I'm healthy, my mind is healthy, my body is healthy, and there's not negative effects from what I'm doing, of course I'm going to keep continuing doing it, because providing it's providing an income, it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, and fulfillment as well.
Oh,
Like
bro.
that's something that a lot of people don't experience from a career path.
Yes, very correct.
Honestly, mate, like the income is quite modest, and I'm happy with that, because I don't need to provide for a family full time. I don't have a mortgage I need to pay off, etc. And I have all my basic human needs met and more. So it's like,
what else do you need?
Yeah, as I said to you, mate, I'm living the dream. It's another day of living the dream. So
off to Derby. How good.
Apparently so, yeah. Got the call yesterday. It's insane.
Mate, we need your details. We've got to get you on the flight. Let's bloody go.
Pretty much, yeah. Frequent flyer number. Let's go.
It's crazy, like you mentioned about, that direction. I just had a quick glance at the questions. You want to make this documentary, Australia, doing it justice, about the riders, because I said, do you think Australia has, obviously you've read the question, do you think Australia has some of the top destinations of the world? But the second part to that question, have we seen the best of Aussie MTB yet? Or do you think there is more to come? Do you think we're going to get another Sam Hill? Like, what do you think is the future of mountain biking in Oz?
Let's break that up into two questions, I reckon, because
we could totally.
This is the most wordy response that I've given.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll start with, do you think Australia has some of the top destinations in the world to ride? Regarding top destinations for riding, I personally don't think Australia is one of the best places in the world. Like, we have good trails here, don't get me wrong about that, but the trails abroad are definitely better. And I don't know whether that's a consequence of the sport being so infant here in Australia, or it's a consequence of bureaucracy, or it's a consequence of isolation from the rest of the industry. Like, it's really hard to say what that's a consequence of.
Yeah, I think it's a culmination of almost all of those things. Like, you think about our highest points and what's actually rideable here.
Highest peak.
Like our highest peak.
2,200 meters, as opposed to in France, I've been riding trails at that elevation, and there's still mountains that are taller around it. So
and mountains, like literally thousands and thousands of kilometers of ranges which are rideable.
Yeah.
No, so it's really, really hard, because I've had conversations with particular people where, not biased to Australia, but it's like a patriot, it's like, oh, we got the best here. And I'm like,
oh, it's definitely a patriotic thing.
Yeah, it's like a patriotic comment. But do you think we've seen like the best of Aussie MTB, like riders, like what we can give to the industry? Like, what's your opinions on that?
Difficult question to answer. Hey, I've written quite a bit here, so let's. I'm trying not to be too controversial or too I'm trying to be politically correct with what I'm going to say here as well, because
feel free to not be. Because I know you've got a business to protect, but.
Oh no, it's more like this is definitely my opinion more than anything else, and some of this is backed up with tangible examples, I guess. So I would say that right now there's a lot of pressure being applied to organizations like national parks and governments, local all the way through to federal, from the Indigenous population of Australia. We're seeing hiking and biking trails that have been around for decades, and not just like here in my local area, But places like Uluru and Mount Warning in NSW, Beerwah up on the Glasshouse Mountains there's speculation that hiking trail is going to be closed because Mount Beerwah is an Indigenous place of significance or something to that effect, and a lot of that is to satisfy spiritual connection with these places that are deemed to have cultural significance. And it's hard for me to really delve into that further because I'm not a person of Indigenous descent. So I haven't really had the opportunity to have these conversations with the Indigenous population either. Like, honestly, they seem to have been, like, if I want to give you actual real world advice of why I'm saying this, or a real world example of why I'm saying this, is because we are looking to have legal mountain bike facilities built here in my local area. And the biggest backlash and hurdles that we have had to face are to do with cultural significance from the Indigenous population. And I'm not pointing the finger. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I do think that better conversations need to be had, because at all of the meetings that I've been at and all the people that I talk to, there's been a lack of Indigenous representation. So it's one thing to say, hey, you can't build trails here because we have a spiritual connection with this mountain, or we have a spiritual connection with this monolith or whatever. But it's another thing to actually have somebody there that is a representative that can answer questions and can have a civil conversation. But right now in Australia, and it's not just to do with building mountain bike trails, it's to do with a lot of things, a lot of developments, whether it be building a mine or building tourism infrastructure or building a multi-lane highway. Everything has to go through some bureaucratic process to do with cultural significance. And I just think the conversations surrounding that need to be more in depth, and there needs to be greater representation from those people. If they're the main people that are going to object to more trails being built here in Australia, because honestly, if I'm going to generalize, that is probably the biggest hurdle that we face in having more trails built here in Australia. And I feel like better conversations need to be had about why that's occurring, about the cultural significance of these places, and maybe even people like myself who can act as key stakeholders for the mountain bike community that have real world evidence about the impact of trails, positive and negative, and mountain biking, and go and present a logical case to these people and say, hey, look, can't we find some kind of agreement here?
Yeah. 100%.
And I know that response got very political very quick, but these are the type of hurdles that I'm experiencing here in my local area, and I know that I'm not the only one experiencing this type of thing here in Australia, because I talk to people that own trail building companies working on multinational, well, I should say multi-million-dollar tenders to build trails around the country, and it is typically the biggest hurdle that we face for building trails here in Australia.
Oh, to be honest, it's like I've never heard that conversation. It's only something that I've recently touched on with a friend of mine in regards to, everybody cops, Queensland is like the nanny state, greens are really whites, blacks are really light blues, and like that. I think that joke is had in everybody's own state, but I've never actually heard that conversation before, but I'm not at all surprised either to hear that, considering the nature of things in the world recently. Just to put it like that.
If I want to actually give you a practical example of some of the best places to ride in Australia, and this is more or less my opinion than actual fact. Everybody's got their taste, so to speak, when it comes to trails. But two of the best places I've ridden in Australia are Boomerang Farm on the Gold Coast and Medina, Tasmania. And you see, the thing with those two facilities is they're on private land, so they are not susceptible to the regular bureaucracy that exists in national parks or exists on Crown land or exists in state forests.
Yeah.
State forests are lenient, but That is why those facilities are miles ahead of everything else here in Australia, is because they can basically do whatever the hell they want and build whatever the hell they want and have the best machine-built trails in Australia. And until a facility comes along that's a private facility that can basically do whatever they want, we're never going to have something like Whistler or Queenstown in Australia. Like, that's the closest we're going to get right now is like Medina and Boomerang Park. And honestly, mate, both of those places are unreal. They are pretty much world-class, like, bike park style trails, those places.
Yeah, gotcha.
But they're private land, so it's like they can do whatever they want. That's kind of where I'm coming at with that whole political philosophy, ideology, rant, whatever you want to call it. If you want to label it a rant, then fair enough. Because I just think we could be doing so much more with the terrain that we have here in Australia, but there are way too many hoops to jump through.
Fair crack. Look, I don't think it's a rant at all. I don't see it as something that's politically incorrect. I think some people, when it comes to these subjects, are unable to stop themselves from being so emotionally invested in it. Because let's say, you've got someone that comes to the party and says, I don't want you to build here because my community X. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Let's talk about it. Let's try and have a middle ground. Like
why don't we talk about our community being the mountain bike
exactly,
and all the positive benefits that having trails in a particular area might yield?
Exactly. Like there's so many things that happen, but I don't think you're presenting anything controversial by letting people know that is a hurdle that trail builders and state governments and people face. That's just a fact. That's just
pretty much.
You know what I mean? It's not politically controversial. People may take it that way, but that's a them problem. You know what I mean?
Think so, yeah. And they can have a conversation with me about it if they want to. They can send me a message. It doesn't have to be hate-filled. You can just say, look, hey, I don't agree with your point of view, and it's for these reasons here. Don't just say you don't agree with me. Like, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about it. Yeah. I want to understand the other side, and I don't feel like that side's being communicated very well to us mountain bikers, basically, or even people that go hiking, or that. Man, the list goes on, but you get the gist.
You're just presenting something that may hold back, exploring where mountain biking can go in regards to quality of trails. But I think one thing you obviously made a massive point. You got me?
Yeah, I got you, man.
Yeah, so no. So I just had a phone ring. I just don't know. I think it's connected to my wife's phone as well.
Yeah, dude, that happens with my missus' phone sometimes as well.
I think one thing we can take from that is it'll probably take someone that's got a bit of coin, or some big, who rides mountain bikes to like maybe, buy a big ass stake of land.
Yeah.
That is like or buy a mountain range, which is such a, like, when you think about
that's why you got a place like Medina that exists, mate. Because they're like, you know what? We don't want to have to go through all your bullshit fucking hoops to build some of the best trails in the world. We're just going to go buy our own slice of mountain and we'll do it ourselves.
It makes so much sense, but the other flip side of that is friggin' the dollar, like the almighty dollar. Like, it's so funny how much of this conversation like can come back to just like a dollar based thing, and how expensive it actually is to get this stuff done. The reason I mentioned before, like, I've only just kind of dabbled in this conversation around MTB is because Jubilee Park in Toowoomba just got awarded $3 million to extend trails around there and surrounding regions, with further money in the budget later on down the track in 23-24. They're going to roll out that, like, another somewhat 80 Ks of trails over the next five years, and all this infrastructure, all the plans, everything is like kind of like you can all go there and view it at the moment. But talking to the person that told me about it, who he speaks with some of the council members and the local club that helps build this stuff, some of the things they have to deal with just to like get it over the line logistically, let alone the point that you raised, it's crazy just to build something to ride bikes on.
Yeah.
Like
well, and that's why you see so many people, not going to name names, not going to suggest that I'm one of these people, but that go out there and just say, you know what, I got tools.
Yeah. What's a I don't know, I just used to dig holes as a kid, right? Like
Yeah, dude, it's yeah.
It's what
yeah.
And then there's other people that share opinions of those people, and that's a whole other facet of mountain biking. Wow. Oh, that's such a good look. To be honest, it's a big subject, what we just touched on, but it's all a part of this community.
Yeah, man. Hopefully it generates some conversation. I'm not expecting anybody to agree with me. I'm just speaking based off personal anecdotes and experience and conversations I have had with other people, professionals that work within this industry. So there's a common trend here. It's not like I'm just plucking some bullshit conspiracy out of my ass.
No, you're not. Not at all. Like I said, man, what you've presented to me, in my personal opinion, is not, you're just stating facts of the process. That's it. Like you're stating facts of the process and the hurdles that people come across, and people will take from it what they will. But I think that's what makes podcasting so beautiful, because it allows people to conversate.
Yeah, it generates a dialogue.
It generates a dialogue, and hopefully off of this, someone else can come in and be like, hey, actually, I'd like to touch on that. This is the experience that I've had. Gives you some perspective, gives me some perspective, gives John Smith some perspective. Maybe a council member sees it who's involved in this, that, and the other thing. And you never know what can come of this stuff. And that's kind of why I started the podcast. Yes, because I love to yarn. I'm an extrovert. I love mountain bikes. But you never can measure the reach of real emphatic conversation. And how that impacts people. Yeah. You can't. There's no measure on what your words and our actions in this call might mean to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's oh man, there's so many questions that are just like spurring in my head now. I'm gonna be buzzing tonight when I start chopping this up, like going back over it, and like, because you presented a few things to me and perspectives that, like, in my creative efforts, in my thoughts around mountain biking, that I haven't really thought about before. And it's super cool. And it's like, people have asked me, are you just going to have riders on? Like, who are you going to have on? I was like, nah, like, I want this to be everybody that's involved in this community, this industry.
You got to get some mechanics on the podcast, dude. Mechanics.
Got to do it. I got to do
Race mechanics are probably, they might not necessarily be the most intelligent people, and I'm not throwing shade at mechanics or anything like that. Don't expect any like how to run a business insights or anything like that. But fucking hell, man, race mechanics are some of the funniest people on the circuit or in the industry. You know, like I don't know what it is about mechanics. They're just hilarious. Like, basically every interaction I've had with a top mechanic has just been hilarious. Like, they're just cracking jokes all day.
Well, it's funny. Everything that I've consumed content-wise in regards to MTB stuff, anything that's involved, you actually very much get that vibe. Like, the mechanics generally seem to be larrikins, not like never shorter one-liners, never really like, you know, they're always, you know, an interesting character. Like, they have their own vibe they have their own vibe aside from the riders and the rest of the team. Because, like, man, if it wasn't, because I have vague understanding of a bike, you have a vague understanding of a bike, what you can do mechanically, but the guys that do those pro mechanics,
nerds, man. There's proper bike nerds.
Yes.
There's
It's
nothing
crazy.
wrong with that at all. It's like, it's pretty
Not
cool.
at all. Like I've had guys, and I'm starting to slowly understand more and more, and I've had mechanics explain things to me, and I'm just like, it just sounds like a maths equation when they try and break down, how how suspension works inside a dampener, what the dampener does, and that's a whole squirrel you could chase right there. Like,
Yeah, man, I'll leave that to the mechanics.
yeah,
I'll figure out how to operate a camera, and I'll let them deal with my bike,
yeah. All right, what is it there? Like, obviously it's a Santa Cruz, but what are you actually riding, bro?
Santa Cruz Nomad. I'm still on 27.5-inch wheels. When I started riding, 26-inch that was the thing.
Yeah.
None of these big wheels, none of this frullet business with a 29 up front and a 27 in the rear or anything. It's just, man, if I could, I'd still be on 26. I don't really care, like I'm not the type of person who's falls for marketing bullshit. And I guess maybe because I've been exposed to it so much and I've worked to essentially project those marketing messages further and to make them more convincing to people, it gives me an ability to kind of see through them and be like, you know what, that new product that you're launching and marketing is not going to really bring me any benefit as a rider. Like I could still be on 26-inch wheels and still be having a great time on a mountain bike.
100%.
And there's obviously merit to particular technological advancements and stuff. And I don't want to sound like a fossil as in like, oh, I'd rather just have a traditional old school mountain bike or whatever, because that's not the case. That's a 2021 Santa Cruz Nomad right there. That's a bloody good bike. Like it's got all the bells and whistles, So it's like, but that's a tool for me. Like I'm fortunate enough that I get to go and film mountain bikes and I need a decent bike to get around. If I'm filming with somebody like Bernard Kerr and we're ripping down Peel Bike Park in Italy, he's not going to wait. He doesn't want to wait around for me to ride some easier green trail that takes twice the amount of time as his black trail or do some stupid beeline or something. So it's like, I need a decent bike to get around.
Yeah,
so as much as I love riding, it's important to me to have a good mountain bike that
yes, of course.
I can throw anything at that bike and I know it's going to handle it. It's going to get me out of trouble. 100%. It's got enough suspension or whatever, and I can pedal it back up the hill. So it's like pretty much perfect all-round bike for me.
That's one question I want to ask. It's like I love that you come from that perspective, because I've got a friend of mine who runs a 26-24, like a real old, like a 15-year-old downhill bike, and it's
like Remy
when
Morton
you look at it
style.
Oh, bro, when he rides this thing, it literally sounds like someone's shaking a toolbox, but he shreds the living hell out of it. Like,
it just goes to show people rely too much on their bike or the latest tech or whatever, and they just there's passengers, mate.
The passenger. I've pedaled my 27.5, and mine was a trail bike uphill, and I pedaled a 29er uphill. And I've got to say, pedaling 29ers when you've got to climb to get to your destination is a lot more enjoyable than. It's actually, I won't put it like that. There's definitely it definitely makes the job a little bit easier pedaling a 29er. When it comes to going downhill, I love my bike. Because I was a 27.5 front and rear. But there are times when I'd be on a slog up a hill and I was just like, oh man, I'd love a little bit of that rollover right now. Do you get that with your bike at all? Is there ever times where you're like, man, having the big wheels would be mint, or are you sweet with it?
No, honestly, I never think to myself, oh, I wish I had big wheels so I could pedal up this hill faster.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, mate, that's why I'm like, I could have 26 and I'd be fine, because I only pedal up a hill so I can ride down. I don't ride down a hill so I can pedal back up. I don't care if it has less rolling resistance going up the hill or whatever. Sure, that's a perk. Yeah. It's nice or whatever. But for me, and I've ridden 29ers, I don't want to sound like that guy once again that's just like a fossil that's just like,
you're doing your thing. It's all good.
I don't like the new tech. It's like, I'm happy with what I'm on. And if if they still had 26, I'd probably still run 26, honestly. I like to have a nice, playful, maneuverable bike. Like if Like my girlfriend gets pissed off about it all the time. We ride together quite a bit, and she's like, "Why are you jumping around the trail all the time, moving about and stuff?"
You're like,
that's how I ride my bike.
Jumping around.
So
you should jump.
Having the smaller wheels and the smaller turning circle and stuff is better to have more maneuverability and pop around and stuff. Like, I don't like the larger size wheels of 29-inch. Like, I just simply don't enjoy that riding experience. The whatever benefits that there are that are associated with it, I personally don't benefit from that. My riding style and the type of trails I ride, it's a marginal consequence. I'm not racing either. And this is another thing that actually, this is a rant. One thing that pisses me off about the mountain bike industry, and you can't just say this about mountain biking, it could be about golf, let's say, for example. People rely way too much on having incredible gear or going out there and buying the top of the line suspension, or that golf clubs. They'll go out and buy the top of the line golf clubs, which are designed for professionals who are playing at the top of the sport, people who are riding mountain bikes at the top of the sport. And it's ironic because you look at that bike and you probably think, oh, like, he's basically got a top of the line mountain bike, but he's not. I'm not racing. I'm not a professional or whatever. But the point that I'm trying to make is that people rely upon that too much, and they probably don't even need that bike. Like, that bike for me is probably more of a bike than I need, but I'm giving it a pretty solid go when I go for a ride. Whereas a lot of people, they could probably get away with a lower spec mountain bike in reality, and they wouldn't even really notice the difference in having the higher spec or whatever. And it comes back around to that whole thing about just not falling for the bullshit marketing tactics, because if you actually did a little bit of research, you'd probably just realize that a SRAM GX derailleur, SRAM GX Eagle or whatever, which is just a mid-range derailleur, is perfectly fine for just your average rider. Like, you don't need to go out there and buy the carbon wireless one that costs $1,000 or whatever. It's like, just save a bit of money, like, prioritize your expenditure a little bit better, and you maybe go get some coaching or something instead. Spend that extra $200 on a coaching session, maybe. Or a lift pass at Threadbow, or like...
Yes. It's
rant over.
No, but look, it can be substantiated. I think it can be substantiated because I saw a TikTok, like the TikTok's like, it was like a left-hand, right-hand thing. The lady had a bike in the background. I think she was a mountain bike coach. And it's just like, spend $10,000 on a new bike, crashes all the time. $800, and I think she gave like whatever her rate was, $800 for XXXX, and the coaching's too expensive.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Because the bike that I'm going to, like, so perfect example, right? I know the type of stuff that I want to ride, so I'm going to make
the Siskiyou is sorry to interrupt, but the Siskiyou is a perfect example, and that is something I actually really admire Polygon for, is because, and having worked directly with them, they know that their target audience and the market they're building those bikes for is not people that want to be a professional downhill World Cup racer.
Correct.
They are building bikes for the everyday consumer, and they price them accordingly, and that's why that bike is a wise purchase. Sure, there may be limitations associated with it.
And I found it.
But the average rider is not going to find those limitations, I don't think.
Yes, true. Well, man, it so ties in perfectly with the next point I'm going to make. Like, for me, I knew the next thing that I needed, because I'm 93 kilos, I'm just under 6 foot, I'm not a small guy. My skills expanded on the bike. I was putting it through some grief, hitting a fair bit of stuff at boomers, getting into a little bit of downhill trails, and I was like, I'd upgraded the fork and brakes, and I had plenty of suspension, but it was time to make that move into something slightly burlier. Obviously,
I know what you mean.
The bike could. I didn't know I was going to snap it. I actually snapped it in a catch berm on a downhill trail. Like, I didn't know if it had a micro fracture, or like what it was, but I was like, all right, sweet. I don't need a $10,000 bike, but I need something suited to what I want to do. And the SRAM transmission, that new thing, close to 4K. Bro, my bike that I'm moving into is more than enough for what I need, and it's costing me just under 5
For the whole bike.
for the whole bike. And it's a perfect example. And I don't even know if I'm going to reach that bike's capabilities with the time that I can give to my riding, but I know that I've got something that's safe, that's going to handle what I want to do, where I want to go, how I want to ride it. I've got, the pedals, the suspension I need, it's got some fancy little bits and pieces, but that's just because that's what I want. Essentially, it's very hard for people to make realistic decisions because people look at marketing, they look at people sending, they look at the shiny bits and
Brandon
pieces.
Semenuk, he uses that stem, so I'm going to buy that one. It's like, are you serious? But are you actually going to look at the full range of products that are presented to you and then make a calculated decision, or are you just going to just pick whatever your favorite rider uses? Like, I don't know. People are easily fooled.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think so. And I'm really glad that when I got back into this, that I have had people around me. Sorry, man. I had a scratch, and this scab is just.
You're all good. That happens to me. Riding bikes.
It does. I'm really glad that I had people around me that have gotten my head, or given me their opinions, and I found that to be true for what I value for mountain biking as well. Like what you just shared, I think is very valid. And yes, it's a personal opinion, but you can't. I don't think anyone could watch that and listen to that and be like, that's not true, because there is truth to it. That's like saying marketing doesn't work.
Well, mate, people can play devil's advocate for fucking everything. I do. I do. Sometimes, honestly, I'm like, but what if? It's like, well, all right, yeah, fair enough, whatever. Well, we might have to agree to disagree on that one.
yeah, bro. But I like that. I think we'll probably share more conversation on that in the future. I'm so happy about the bike that I'm going for is not even a big name bike. I just like the color of it.
Sweet.
I like the shape of it. It looks sick. I'm putting a little bit of spank kit on it because someone's given me an opportunity to, customize it a little bit, and it's not overly breaking the budget because of finance options and stuff, but it's perfect for what I need. And if someone said, hey, here's a $15,000 bike, go ride this, of course I'm going to do it. Whether I can ride that bike to its potential, probably not.
Yeah. And that's the same scenario for, I'd say, 95% of people that ride mountain bikes.
Yeah. I have that appointment to get to. I'm going to leave it there, my man, if that's cool with you.
It's fine by me, man. No worries at all. I'm sure that we could have potentially continued on with this for another hour, potentially multiple hours. Basically, I'd like to just extend a little offer to you, mate. If, let's say, maybe a year from now, podcast is still going strong, still recording, still editing, etc., still putting out episodes, maybe we can catch up in about a year from now and see if anything's progressed, maybe have a chat about some stupid marketing bullshit and set some things straight in the industry, hey?
Bro, I think I would. Trust me, man. I've got some aspirations for it, and there's multiple other guests that have been booked already, and I'm loving what I'm doing, so I'll definitely take you up on that offer, bro.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. I just hope more than anything else that we've been able to provide the audience with some good insights. I've been a professional in the mountain bike industry for the best part of 15 years. Basically since I was a kid and grown and matured with the industry, so to speak. And just try and provide the most candid insights possible into mountain biking.
I love it, bro. Guys, that was the fifth. Did I say fifth? Fifth episode of the Fully Pinned podcast. Ty Bowmaker, thank you so much for your time. I honestly had a blast. You've been a dead set legend, man. I really
That's all
appreciate
good, man. Pretty fortunate. I got a bit of time between film projects right now, so I'm stoked we could
Absolutely
make
stoked.
it work, and look forward to catching up with you again soon, mate.
Sounds good, bro. Let's keep in contact, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, boy. All right. Well, good luck with the appointment. Speak soon. And
Yo,
everybody, cheers for tuning into the Fully Pinned podcast. Appreciate
Let's
it.
go.
Appreciate you
Let's
having
go.
a listen, and tune in for episode 6.
See, this guy knows. He knows what's going on. 100%. All right, thank you, brother. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
See you soon, mate. Have a good day.
Peace. We'll do. Bye.
The Fully Pinned Podcast.